In this lesson we're going to carry on with IELTS Speaking Part 2 and we're going to look at the topic Describe an Object, one of our 6 main topics for IELTS Speaking Part 2. Remember, what we're trying to do in this preparation for IELTS Speaking Part 2 is work on good ideas, good vocabulary for the most common topic areas, the most common tasks for this part of the test. We're not working on grammar or linking. That will not help you in Speaking Part 2. It's all about good ideas and good vocabulary so that you respond to the task well and give a really good description. That's what will impress the examiner. In these lessons for IELTS Speaking Part 2, we've been looking at 6 main topic areas that I think you should prepare for. These are: describe a person, place, object, event, activity, and favourites. And in this lesson, we're going to look at the topic Describe an Object. Remember, our focus is on preparing ideas and vocabulary, not grammar or linking. Let's have a look now at the topic Describe an Object and the different possible questions or tasks for this topic. Well, here are some that I've seen in real exams or in the official IELTS books. Describe something you own. Describe something you would like to own. Something you use every day. A piece of electronic equipment. A gift you received. A gift you gave. Something old that you own. As you can see, all of these tasks are object descriptions. You're being asked to describe different types of object. On the task card that the examiner gives you, it will ask you to describe one of these objects, and it will show you some bullet points that you can use in your description. These points usually begin with the question words what, where, who, how, why. For example, you will have to say, of course, what the object is, maybe where you got it from, or who gave it to you, or how long you've had this object. And the question, the last bullet point, will always be why. Why do you like this object? Why do you think it's special? Why do you want it? And now for my main tip for this Describe an Object task. It's very simple. Choose an object that could be used for any of the topics above. That's what we're going to do in this lesson. And my object that I'm choosing as an example is a watch, a wristwatch that you wear on your wrist to tell the time, of course. And in this lesson, I'm going to do 2 example descriptions of a watch. One for an electronic piece of equipment, so we're going to have a new electronic watch. And just in case, I'm also going to prepare an old watch description, a description of an old watch that isn't electronic. And I think that those 2 descriptions can cover all of the possible describe an object topics, all of the others. Something you own, something you'd like to own, something you use every day. Of course, you could use either of these watch descriptions for those. The same with a gift you received and a gift you gave. So just 2 descriptions to cover the whole of this topic area. That's the aim. As I did in my previous lessons for Speaking Part 2, I'm going to now prepare vocabulary themes, in this case for the 2 types of watch. Let's have a look at our first theme. To describe the electronic watch, I'm going to focus on features of the watch, what the watch can do. Here are some good vocabulary ideas. We can say that we're describing a smartwatch, one of these new types of watch that does lots of special things, almost like a smartphone. So it can synchronize with your phone or your computer. That means it can link with it. You can synchronize, therefore, your contacts, your photos, your emails. You can store music, receive notifications, search the web. It responds to voice commands. You can make contactless purchases. You can pay with these watches nowadays. You can also track your exercise goals and also it's a fashion accessory these days. You can say it looks stunning, you can talk about the design. So this type of smartwatch has lots of good features that can help our description, and I'm sure you know some of the brands of these watches. For example, the new Apple Watch is what I'm thinking of here when I give you this vocabulary. On the other hand, we could have some different vocabulary. The electronic watch useful theme, the theme of it being very useful. Let's have a look at some good words and phrases for that. Various features and functions. I use it to organise my life. For example, work, commitments, appointments, my social life. You can check your calendar at a glance on these watches. You can set reminders and notifications. These watches are practical, functional, convenient. You could call them the ultimate in portable devices. You have instant access to the internet, etc. And you could say that you couldn't live without this watch now that you have it. Very similar to describing a mobile phone, but we've changed it to this watch gadget. One reason for that is because many people these days in their exams are choosing to describe their phones, and I think examiners would like to hear something a little bit different. Now moving on to the other type of watch, the old watch, we're going to take a completely different theme. The theme of you inheriting this watch, which means that you got this watch from an older family member. So it's an old watch this time. It doesn't have all these new features, but we can still have some good vocabulary. Let's have a look at the inherited theme vocabulary now. An inheritance means it was passed down to me by father, mother, grandparents. You can say it's a family heirloom. That's a word that maybe examiners wouldn't expect to hear in the test. A family heirloom meaning an important thing passed down in your family. It's been in the family for several generations. It's an antique. It has sentimental value. I'm emotionally attached to it. It reminds me of. It brings back happy memories. I'll hand it down to my children. Notice I've used a couple of phrasal verbs in here as well. Hand down or pass down. So that's good vocabulary about the inherited theme. One more theme for this old watch. The appearance. You could describe the parts, the face of the watch, the strap, the traditional clock dial, which is where the numbers are, and the hands which move round. You can say what it's made of, maybe a leather strap, maybe some nice gold or silver. You could talk about the colours. Maybe this watch, if it's an important old watch from a family member, maybe it has an inscription or engraving on the back. That's where on the back of the watch face there is some writing, maybe the person's name. So you could say my grandfather's name is engraved on the back of this watch. You could talk about the simple minimalistic design. You could say it's timeless, classic, elegant, stylish, and also well-made, durable, resilient, because this is an old object. It has lasted a long time. So some very good vocabulary there about the general appearance of this watch too. And as I've said before, a final useful step in your preparation is to think of examples or stories to demonstrate each vocabulary theme. For example, if I said, my watch is useful, the useful theme, I could give an example of that. If my watch hadn't notified me, I would have forgotten that I had a dentist's appointment yesterday, for example. Or on the old watch theme, it has sentimental value, the inherited old watch. I could say as an example, I remember that when I was a child, my grandfather taught me how to tell the time using this watch. So those are the examples that could help us to keep talking and develop those vocabulary themes even more. After that, it's just a case of practicing And as I've said before, I recommend that you record yourself, because then you can write down what you said and you can analyze it and you can try to improve your description. Maybe repeat the process, record yourself again and keep writing down what you said. Analyze your mistakes, analyze whether you used all of the good theme vocabulary and how you could improve your description. Let's move on now, finally, to the example questions for this lesson. We're going to look at 2 example questions and you'll hear me give my full 2-minute sample answers. Here's the first question. Describe something that you would like to own. You should say what it is, where you have seen it, what you would use it for, and explain why you would like to own this object. I'm going to try to speak for 2 minutes about this topic and I'll start the time now. I'm going to talk about a watch that I would like to own. It's one of these new smart watches, the new type of watch that has all the functions and features of a smartphone, of a mobile phone, but of course you wear it on your wrist, so it's even more portable. And this is a new fashion accessory these days, a new gadget that I've seen advertised everywhere, on billboards in the city centre, on TV adverts, and I've seen these watches in person, in real life, in various department stores that I've been to when out shopping. And I'm not sure which brand I would buy, but I've seen the various brands, and maybe the most famous one at the moment is the Apple Watch. The reason I'd like one of these watches is because you can synchronize it with your computer and phone, and so you've got all your contacts, your photos, and especially calendar and notifications right there on your wrist, and you're carrying it around with you. So I think it would be particularly convenient for me to be able to organize my life using one of these watches and check my appointments and work commitments at a glance, just looking at my wrist. I think it'd even be good maybe for health reasons, because apparently you can track your exercise goals and your even things like the number of steps you're taking every day. So that might be quite interesting. So the reason that I'd like one of these watches, as I said, would be the features and functions that I've just mentioned. I think these watches are really practical. It's just as good as a phone in terms of the technology, but it's even more portable. Really, they're the ultimate in portable devices. And I'm a fan of gadgets, and this one looks really stunning too. So those are the reasons why I think it'd be nice to have one. And the 2 minutes has finished there, so I'll have to stop. Now, the second example question for this lesson. Describe something old that you own which is special to you. You should say what this possession is, how long you have had it, where it came from, and explain why this possession is special to you. Here we go, I'll start the time now. I'm going to describe an old wristwatch that I inherited from my grandfather. So it's a family heirloom, it's an antique watch, and it's really a simple classic old watch with a leather strap and a white face and a gold edge around it. And I've had it for the last 10 years, I think it is, since my grandfather gave it to me. But it's been in the family for several generations before that. In fact, I think it came originally from my great-grandfather, because his name is engraved on the back of the watch face. So perhaps it was a gift that he received from an employer or a friend or another family member. We're not really sure, but he had it originally and then passed it down to my grandfather, and now it's obviously mine. The reason it's special then is because of this sentimental value that this watch has. As I said, it's a family heirloom. It's probably the only antique, really old possession that I've got that reminds me of my grandfather, and it brings back happy memories. For example, I remember when my grandfather was helping me to learn to tell the time when I was a child, and because his watch had such a simple, clear clock face, it was very easy for me to understand what he was talking about when he showed me the how the big hand was for the minutes and the shorter small hand on The watch was for the hours. So I remember him teaching me to tell the time and testing me with different times to see if I understood. I also like the watch's stylish, elegant design. It's very simple. It's just a classic, timeless look, and it's really durable and resilient. I think it's so well made that I'll be able to hand it down to the next generation when I'm older. So that was my second 2-minute description, and if you download the attached worksheet you can see the script for that and for the first description that I did as well. In the next lesson we'll do something similar with the topic describe an event. In this lesson we'll continue with IELTS Speaking Part 2, and we're going to prepare the main topic area, describe an event. Remember, what we're trying to do in this preparation for IELTS Speaking Part 2 is work on good ideas, good vocabulary for the most common topic areas, the most common tasks for this part of the test. We're not working on grammar or linking. That will not help you in Speaking Part 2. It's all about good ideas and good vocabulary so that you respond to the task well and give a really good description. That's what will impress the examiner. This lesson is the fourth lesson in the series of lessons that we're looking at Speaking Part 2. The 6 main topic areas: describe a person, place, object, event, activity and your favourites. And this lesson, as I said, is about describe an event, this topic question. Let's look at this topic now. First, you need to know, of course, what will be on the task card. If you're asked to describe an event, you'll be asked to describe what, where, who and why about this event. Of course, what the event was, or what type of event it was, where it was, who went or who was performing or who was in the event, and of course at the end a question about why. Why did you like it? Why did you enjoy the event? Why do people enjoy this event or go to this kind of event? Very simple, describing something that happens. Now, let's look at some possible questions that I've seen in real exams or in the official IELTS books. Here's one. Describe an important event in your life. Another. Describe a festival in your country, a party, a celebration. Now, for all of these 4 possible questions, we could probably prepare a description of a festival and use that for any of them. We could also prepare very common events like a wedding or birthday. They can't be used to describe a festival because that's not really the same, but a wedding or birthday can be used, of course, to describe an important event, a party, or a celebration. That's the first type of event that we need to prepare for, festivals and parties, but also you might get a task about a sports event that you watched. That's completely different. And finally, a concert or music event. And my advice, as always, is to prepare vocabulary themes for any event. Even though we've got a few different types of event here, festival, wedding, sports event, concert are very different, but we can use a lot of the same vocabulary to describe any of them. Let's look at some examples of good vocabulary for this topic then. The first theme that I've chosen is to say that this was a special event. Any of those events that we saw on the previous slide could have been a special event, a festival, a party, a sporting event, a musical event. They could all be special. Here's some good vocabulary around that theme. It was a memorable event, unforgettable, spectacular, fantastic, amazing, wonderful, a day to remember. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I had a great time. I enjoyed every minute. I was blown away, which means I was really impressed, really surprised. I couldn't have asked for more. It exceeded my expectations. These are some good words and phrases to describe almost any event that you enjoyed, that you thought was special. Another theme where the event was. Of course, any event takes place in a particular place, so we can definitely prepare some good vocabulary about that. The venue, even just a simple word like that, most people wouldn't remember to use that kind of word in their test. The venue is the place where the event was. You can say it was a perfect or prime location. The place was beautifully decorated, or the decoration or lighting was spectacular, romantic. It was a lovely setting, a fantastic atmosphere. The atmosphere was electric. We were impressed by, and you can talk about the people in the venue, the service, the staff, the attention to detail. Lots of good things that we can say about the place of the event. And finally, it's good to prepare some specific vocabulary for those four main types of event that we saw earlier. For example, if you're preparing wedding vocabulary, you're going to have words like the bride, the groom, that's the female and the male who are getting married, the guests, the ceremony, the marriage vows. Those are the things that the couple has to say when they're getting married. The speech, maybe someone in the family made a speech at the wedding. We don't say a wedding party, we say a wedding reception. After the ceremony, you could talk about the flowers, the clothing, the bride's dress, the cake, lots of specific vocabulary that we could use just for this particular event. Another type, the festival. You could say what the festival commemorates. That means what was the reason for the festival, but that's a good word, commemorates. Maybe the festival has some religious significance. Maybe you give gifts or have special decorations, special customs, a meal. Maybe it's a public holiday. Think of some specific vocabulary for the festival that you want to describe. Look it up on the internet and get more good vocabulary about the particular things that happen in that festival. If we look at the other two types of event now, the sports event, you could talk about the athletes or the players, the crowd, the spectators, the stadium, or maybe it's a sports field or a pitch or a track if it's for running, a pitch if it's for football, for example. The commentators are the people who are talking about this event. Maybe you're watching this event on television and you hear the presenters, the commentators speaking. You can talk about the contest, the score, the winner. There's lots of specific vocabulary for every type of sport. Finally, for the music event, the concert, you might be describing a band, a group, an orchestra, the lighting, the sound, the stage, the crowd, the audience, the instruments, the voice, a song, or a piece of music. There's lots of specific vocabulary for concerts or musical events as well. And then remember, the final step in preparation that we've used in every one of these lessons is to think of examples or stories to demonstrate each theme. These examples will really depend on your festival or party or celebration, but here are some examples to give you an idea of what you could prepare. If I say, my sister's wedding was special, let's explain why with an example. I enjoyed the occasion because it was great to see my sister so happy on her big day. Another example, if I say, the concert was spectacular. Let's explain that with an example. Suddenly the venue lit up and the crowd cheered as the musicians came onto the stage. So we're describing the beginning of the concert there and why it's spectacular with an example. A couple more tips to finish. First, search on the internet for ideas about the particular events that you would choose. For this topic, you really need to choose your own events, and it's best if they are real. If you're telling the truth, it's easier. So you need to search on the internet for your particular festival, wedding, concert or sporting event to get a few more ideas. Of course, you can use mine as well. Use my theme vocabulary, but add your own themes and vocabulary. And finally, Describe what happened step by step from the beginning to the end of the event. For this topic, it's really useful to have a story that goes in order from the beginning to the end, because events happen in that way, of course. You can describe step by step what happened, and it should be very easy for you to fill the 2 minutes with that kind of description. When you've prepared some good vocabulary, your themes and your examples, you're ready to practice. And as I always say, you should record yourself, because then you can write down what you said, you can analyse it, and you can try to improve your description. Make sure you're using as much good vocabulary as possible. And that brings us to our example questions for this lesson. I'm not going to do example questions about the festival and wedding, because I've done those on my blog already, and so I'm going to attach those on the worksheet next to this video. Instead of that, we're going to focus on what I haven't done before on my free website, on my blog. I haven't done the sports and music events before, so I'm going to give you an example of each of those in the rest of this lesson. First, the sports event. Here's the question. Describe a sports event that you enjoyed watching. You should say what event you watched, where you were, who you watched it with, and explain why you enjoyed watching it. Okay, I'm going to start the 2 minutes now. I'm going to describe what I think was the most memorable event in recent years that I remember, which was the London 2012 Olympic Games. This was a spectacular festival of sport over the course of several weeks here in England, and I think it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for us to have the Olympic Games in our own country. I was unfortunately at home watching most of the Olympics on television. I didn't manage to go down to London to see any of the events in person, but I enjoyed them all on TV at home in my own house, or sometimes with friends or family at their houses. And I do remember the events themselves, though, were in all different places across London, mainly at the Olympic Park area in the main stadium, or the various other smaller stadiums for the different events like the swimming, the basketball, etc. And I watched various of these different events when they were on television. As I said, I was watching at home, usually on my own or with family or occasionally with friends. I remember, for example, watching the 100 metres sprint race, which is probably considered to be the most important or the most famous event in the Olympic Games. We often call it the blue ribbon event, and there was a lot of hype and anticipation surrounding the 100 metres at the London Olympics, because everyone wanted to see whether Usain Bolt would win again, or whether anyone would be able to beat him. So I enjoyed this event, the London Olympic Games, because I think it was an unforgettable experience to see it in my own country. There were some great performances and victories by the athletes, and I enjoyed every minute. That was the end of the 2 minutes. You can see how I did by downloading the worksheet and looking at the script there. Now I'll move on to the second example question, and it's about the music topic, the music event. Here's the question. Describe a concert or musical event in your country. You should say who the musicians are, where the concert is held, what type of music is played, and explain why people attend this musical event. I'll start the 2 minutes now. I'm going to describe a concert that I've actually been to that takes place here in Manchester, where I live. The musicians who perform this concert are classical musicians. It's an orchestra called the Halle Orchestra, which is obviously made up of the conductor, the string instruments like violins, the percussion, the woodwind instruments, the brass instruments, etc. And these musicians play in a concert hall, a venue called the Bridgewater Hall here in Manchester, which is a purpose-built concert hall, by which I mean that it was designed specifically for music. The sound acoustics are really good in the concert room, and the lighting, the stage, etc. They were all built specifically for music. And the type of music that you would expect from an orchestra would normally be classical music, but this particular concert that I think they put on once a year is a bit more popular or mainstream, because the orchestra plays theme music from famous films, the soundtracks from films, and most of them are very popular, well-known Hollywood films like E.T., Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, the James Bond films, that kind of thing. And this is why people attend, because we all know, or most of us know, the music from those films, and it's amazing to hear a full orchestra playing these songs, these pieces of music in a live venue, and the sound quality is fantastic, and to hear these pieces of music loud and live is really wonderful. I, for example, was particularly blown away by the E.T. soundtrack, which is a really, really emotional piece of music when you hear it, especially in a live venue like that. I've stopped it there because that was 2 minutes. You can download the attached worksheet and see the script for that description as well. And you can analyse how good it was in terms of how much of the vocabulary I used. My focus is always on trying to use as many of the good words and phrases that I prepared as possible. In the next lesson, we'll do something similar for the topic describe an activity.